Welcome back to the YouTube channel, guys. It's Jay Ayyo. So today we are going to be talking about the clerk to the Houses of Parliament, Miss Colleen Lau, and we're going to be talking about Miss Pamela Ellis, who is the Auditor General of Jamaica. Now, why are we talking about this? We're talking about this because the clerk to the Houses of Parliament had to go to the Public Accounts Committee to answer the 50-page report that the Auditor General gave an opinion on, and this has to do with with any government department where public funds are being spent, used, or dispersed. You the department and agency, or department or agency in this case, has to give an account of the funds that were spent. So in this case, the clerk to the Houses of Parliament, Ms. Colleen Law, had to present herself and her team to answer questions from the Public Accounts Committee members, which the Auditor General is, could you say, independent person that questions things pertaining to government finances. Now, it was discovered that there were a lot of issues, lack of oversight, or it just wasn't being monitored before. But questions of allowing a staff, which in this case was a fleet manager, to use a government vehicle for use beyond the hours of work hours, given that this individual had gotten into altercation. Miss Colleen Lau allowed this, and the individual was there up until late hours doing work. It was contributed to the fact that they had an aging building. There was a lot of inefficient things happening. You had ACs breaking down, and you had varied things happening where the structure is aging and it needs more maintenance. And the older the building gets, the more maintenance will need. And in certain air conditioners had to be replaced or needed to be replaced, and a procurement step or process guideline was not followed. Now, the issue with that is it can be done, but there has to be a reason to substantiate it. But in every case where Miss Colleen Lau was being asked a question, and you're the chief officer or the chief executive officer in this case, you have to give account. Saying things like, "Oh, I was there at that time," or "I was off island," it really did not go over well. But more importantly, it shatters the trust of the people with the government, where if the parliament is not doing what it's supposed to do in terms of one, following the rules, following laws, following the regulations, we understand why people do their own thing in Jamaica? Because nobody likes to follow rules. Well, some people don't like to follow, but it gives the impression that the let's say the Parliament of Jamaica, which the Clerk of Parliament manages administratively, if they're not following the rules, you can't expect your population to do things that you yourselves don't do. And in the 50-page report, because I read the report, and you all don't have to read the report, basically outlined that there were a lot of inefficiencies happening. Logbooks for vehicles were not presented. You had drivers who needed special certification who weren't being certified or being tracked for recertification. It looks as if there was breakdown in management, and in essence, in this case, Miss Colleen Lau's ability to manage her team administratively. You're supposed to be delegating, getting reports. Yes, you're in Parliament every week in addition to the Tuesday, so there's a lot of planning that goes into preparing for that. But you have to develop a senior leadership team and say, this is what I expect from you all as a senior leadership team, and this is what I expect to get done, and this is what needs to get done. It just came across as, well, because it was highlighted, now we're dealing with it. Now we're working on it. Well, what were you doing before? And there were significant amounts where you had financial errors where funds needed to be transferred and it wasn't verified, and it went to a large exorbitant amount, but the bank didn't come back. But based on the instructions that they gave, it was not clear either. So there was a lot of mishaps happening, and I think Miss Colleen Law to look at, I guess, trying to see how you have a servant leader or participatory leader with your colleagues and ensure that efficiency is paramount at the end of the day. The 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 report came about because they didn't answer a certain question, which sparked a special report. And understandably, though it is Parliament and it's the Parliament asking themselves a question, are we doing what we're supposed to do? The answer is going to be no. Your technocrats who support, let's say, the day to day function of legislation, giving procedural advice, giving policy advice, and giving legislative advice, their home is not in order. And I think, you know, that says a lot. And so, the where it comes to financial accountability, that will need to be fixed. In terms of the controversies, there are a lot. Efficiency and governance, they need to have more internal audits. They need to be more prepared. It doesn't seem as if their finance individual stays long. Either could be attributed to the large amount of work that has to be done, um, ensuring compliance, making parliamentarians are abiding by the parliamentary rules, and the employees in the parliament are also abiding by it as well, and ensuring that, looking at the holistic view, this is what will improve the House of Parliament to not be on a certain list. Miss Colleen was forthcoming to most of her answers. It came across as a learning experience that she probably had not encountered before, or um what I would say, have opportunity, because her job is very intense. Being in parliament every day plus Tuesdays, planning, you don't really get time to do strategic stuff, which on her part, she did explain. However, it showed that things needed to be improved, which is what she looked at. And Miss Colleen Lau committed to certain undertakings on things to be worked on. But I think by and large, the lesson that could be learned out of this is that always take the moment, even if you are wrong, to say, you know, I may have been wrong in this, but this is something I'm willing to improve. I know people in the workforce or won't like to admit when they did something wrong, but at this high level where you're dealing with large amounts of funds, you're dealing with personnel, managers, you have to have your checks and balances in, so that you can protect the company in doing what it should be doing, both through the channels of getting approval for finances, or even doing procurement, even though it may take longer than expected. That is takeaway. I hope to see you all in the next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you in the next video.